And welcome everyone to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. That was almost the thumbnail I used for this too. Um, I am joined today by Brandon from Runehammer Games. I'm sure you all probably know him from a number of different names as well, but here we have Brandon today. So I'm really excited about this interview. It was great dealing with Alyssa as well, who I'm assuming is your community manager or whatever her title is, and
Mhm.
so she was very very helpful and very quick in responding and everything like that. So that was setting this whole thing up was very very easy to do, and so I will let you introduce yourself first and give you the floor for the most part.
Hi, everybody. It's me, your old buddy. It's Hankard Ferniehill here, Ingrid Bernal, and all that good stuff from Runehammer. And I'm coming to you live and direct from the scenic view of my workshop office here at Runehammer in Philadelphia. Look at all this splendor of our stock room. Behold. I need to get some kind of like a string that you pull where like the Hogwarts background drops down in the back or something.
Yeah. Or the curtain. There's a curtain, right? So it's like the Wizard of Oz behind
Yeah, or
the
that
man
huge
behind the
mechanical
curtain.
head that
Yeah.
like assembles behind me so that you're more terrified of me than you really should be.
So it's been a great year for you, I'm sure. With the opening of a storefront. So I'll let you talk about that with the release of Crown and Skull, which is, I mean, 2024 has been a great year for a
Man.
lot of independent and OSR creators out there. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that as well.
Well, I mean, I get now that you list a few things out, it's been quite insane. But
Mhm.
really, the nickname we had given to 2024, we had been calling it the Summer of Madness. So
Mhm.
it's probably little known to anyone on the internet or who hasn't sort of been to the shop and kind of learned a little more about us. But it actually took us almost 14 months to open the shop. It was a very long, arduous, expensive journey. And through the summertime was the hardest part. It's when we were the most like backed up, like our whole house was filled with inventory and like our living room. I don't mean like my basement or something. Like it was right there in our like daily life. And there's like a little rat maze in our living room because we had all our stuff and we were ready. We had all the decor and we had
Mhm.
chosen out like sort of some of these antique furniture pieces and other stuff, but we just couldn't get like the contractor sort of permit side to line up in a timely fashion. It is an arduous process to do that for any business opener or business owner,
Right.
especially in Philadelphia, which is a very old city and has kind of a little bit of chaos and some outdated practices with all that stuff. But
Mhm.
that's what everybody has to go through. So there we are, and we were ready, at least in our minds, like in April,
Right.
but we opened the shop September 14th. So that difference in time, that 5.5 months, was total insanity. It was not fun
Mhm.
because like we also couldn't go do anything. Like at any moment on any day, you might be needed to help clear a roadblock or something might get done, or you might need to run down here to talk to a contractor or something. So you couldn't open the shop, but you also couldn't not open the shop. You were just waiting every day, all day. It was really, really hard. So that was almost like the biggest part of 2024 in my mind. But I appreciate your calling out such things, Richard, because yeah, at the same time, I was finishing Crown and Skull Volume 2, and we were, I mean, successfully like sort of hiding in the bushes like a hunter with the shop, because of these delays. So we thought ourselves ready in the spring, but the fact that we had that extra 5.5 or so months
Yeah.
made us extremely ready so that by the time the shop was getting ready to open, we were ready to come in like at a sprinting pace. Um, and that wouldn't have been the case if we had opened up earlier. So we may have dodged a bit of a karmic bullet there a little bit. Like sometimes you feel like you're kicked to the side in life, and you're like, oh man, come on, I really wanted to get a Nintendo, but like it's actually sort of winds up being that you wound up being far more prepared when your time did finally come. So it was really frustrating and really an anathema to how I normally do everything, which is I do everything very fast and very intense, and I like to get it done. So like the trial of patience in 2024 was totally wild, but I appreciate you hollering about like both opening a brick and mortar shop and publishing a book in the same year. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but yeah, hell yeah, I did that.
Yeah. And Roger here is so he checked out the store right after PAX U, and he loved it. So that's great. Loved it so much we went back. Oh, we went twice already.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean that's a pretty impressive thing, to open up a brick and mortar store, especially where within this hobby in general, and and the reading hobbies, like comic book stores and those kinds of things, kind of I throw into the same category. And
Mm.
it was certainly a tough time, 4 years ago for obvious reasons, but many of them, didn't survive it. Number one, and then I'm sure that there's some gun shyness to, going right back into that kind of thing. So,
Yes.
so yeah, it takes it legitimately takes courage, I think, to open up a brick and mortar, store, in these times, even though we're kind of beyond that issue and everything.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's it. So, with the building itself, it's a reno, right? So you had to renovate it, or
No,
was it
no,
a
actually,
construct?
the story of our building is sort of part of our story, which
Yeah.
is we live right here in this neighborhood, and this is
Mhm.
like our neighborhood.
Right.
And for 3 or more years, almost 4 years, we're walking our dog
Mhm.
around this site. But this site
Yeah.
was basically a sort of an urban ruin. It was
Mm.
an old triangle shaped building where the back had collapsed. And so it had
Wow.
collapsed into its own foundation.
Mm.
And at some point, probably during a snowstorm or something, a couple of big construction trucks had slid into the hole.
Holy
So
cow.
there were just these two huge trucks that were nosed into this foundation, and bricks had fallen on the trucks, and vines had grown through the whole thing. And I mean, that's Philadelphia. It's an old
Yeah.
place, and it has ruins in it. But one day we come walking around the corner like we always do, and the trucks had been somehow removed. I don't know what level of crane was involved here, but the
Mhm.
trucks were cleared out, and they began to clean out the foundation. We were like, oh my gosh, wow, that is exciting, because it's not really necessarily good for a neighborhood to have like a giant ruin right there.
Yeah.
I know everybody has opinions on like rebuilding neighborhoods and the different effects it has, but for us, this was great. It was like
Right.
a major overhaul, and so they pulled out the foundation and they started building this new building, and it had this really stylish kind of curved shapes on it and everything. The more that it evolved, we're like, this building has like major cool energy. Like this is like
Right.
a new sort of landmark in our neighborhood. And so during that same construction time, we had been kind of dreaming about basically getting me out of the house. That's kind of how it had begun, because my whole sort of operation was it was getting to be too much. It was kind of outgrowing my room. And I also, to be very frank, Richard, I was starting to really chafe at the lifestyle of the internet business person.
Mm.
Like being in your room and being on YouTube like a lot
Mm.
did not was not making me happy. It felt very weird. It was like I was like excluded from society. It was like not a
Right.
good vibe. And in the beginning, working from home and stuff, and I by the beginning I mean more like 2014 or so.
Yeah.
It was like a real privilege to kind of work in your room and to kind of be
Right.
remote and stuff like that. But after 9, almost 10 years of it, it was not good. Like I needed to see some people. I needed to like shake some hands and feel some smiles. And so we started throwing around this idea, and as the building came together, um, they split the front, which is the pointy part that we didn't want, from the side part, which is the bigger, blockier part that we wanted. And when
Right.
they did that split, we kind of, the idea got a little more ambitious, as we say, with every beer that we drank.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just contacted the owner, and I was just like, yo, I kind of have this crazy idea. What do you think? And that was, in my mind, I was just like, they're totally going to say no, and I'll be free of this insanity. But sadly, the landlord was like, oh man, that sounds dope. I was like, uh-oh.
Now you
Oh
committed.
no, now I have to follow through and do it. So yeah, the whole building was brand new when we got it. It was
Wow.
it was so new. It was only concrete and like metal girders, and had to go back to city planning because there were a couple 2-inch discrepancies. So we had to
Right.
go all the way back to the original architect and work with the original architect. So we were part of the absolute base level sort of construction of this. I even have the plans. I had to get into architecture a little bit. So I had to design the floor plan and where the doors and the walls and the electric and everything.
Right.
And I had to do that whole thing. So by the time you get into all that stuff, like I have the plans hanging over my office door because I'm so proud of them. But by the time you do all that stuff, you really form a deep connection with the space. It really becomes kind of like your second home. So yeah, there was no renovation involved at all. We kind of built it from the ground up.
Yeah, gamers need only socialize with other gamers, and our wives if they're non-gamers, which is my case too. So,
I could not disagree more. But I think it was in jest.
uh, so let's see. Loving within the interview. Listen while you're doing your husband chores. Well,
Yes,
nice to
those are
have you
good
here,
quotes.
Tunkel Todd. Let's talk about games now. So, was your first RPG, index card RPG? That was your
Mhm.
first,
Yeah, that was my first widely known published
right?
work. Yeah.
So, with that, what made you like? I mean, all of your games that I have at least is so I have Index Card, I have Viking Death Squad, and I have Crown and Skull. And looking at each of those, they are such a departure from the tried and true. So in many cases, they each have like just an innovation that just comes from where did that inspiration come from to break from the mold?
Hmm. I don't know. It's sort of just a kind of an ill-advised habit that I have, I guess.
Hmm.
Oh wait, I'm the only one here, and the phone's ringing, so they're just gonna have to wait. Isn't that crazy? There's a landline, Richard. There's a
I still have
landline in
a
this
landline
building.
too. We just can't get away from it, I guess.
And it
Is it
sounds
a,
like the
is it a
landline
is
in
it
a
a
truck
rotary
too.
phone though? That's the question. Is it
Super
rotary?
funny. Okay, so it's sort of the I guess the breaking the mold kind of aspect. To me, it's just sort of like a habit, and I honestly think it's both my greatest strength and my worst weakness. Is like I do tend to just sort of follow my nose, or as I like to call it, like chase cars.
Hmm.
And I just chase cars. I don't really think about the outcome, and I just kind of am driven to do it. I have been since I was like a little kid. I used to write like these little sort of loose leaf stories about fish, and I would draw these fish, and I would kind of make these anthropomorphic fish. I know that sounds really specific and random, but that really is where it began. And I just was always driven to like make these weird things. And the reason I describe it in such a way is that on the one hand, I mean, I appreciate your kind words about some of the stuff I've made. I do definitely am known, I guess, as being innovative or kind of off to the left or off to the side or being a little crazy. But at the same time, like in this sort of wider sense of the industry, like the way that I don't really like to use Kickstarter and the way that I don't really like to sort of fit into the sort of mainstream aspects of the hobby, it definitely holds me back. It really does. And sometimes that frustrates the hell out of me. Um, but other times, you know, I know that there's no other path. Like, you know, and I guess a good example would be you already mentioned Shadow Dark earlier. I think that Shadow Dark does a good job of staying in that familiarity zone,
Mhm.
and so has that bigger kind of landing pad. Um, and I would love to have all that audience and stuff, that reach and stuff, but frankly, I just don't think I can do it. Like I tend
Yeah.
to just go into crazier and crazier realms. And you only mentioned my three sort of high profile
Mhm.
works. You know, a ton of my works are so left field that they never really even make it to that wide of a public eye. But I just am driven to do them. You know,
Right.
I
Yeah.
just have to do them, or I kind of get itchy and crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so I don't
those
really
are
know where it
products of
comes
love,
from.
right? So it's you know, it's important to do what you love doing, you know, and you know, if it hits, great. If it doesn't hit, you're still happy with your product, and that's you know, that's the key thing behind it is
Mhm.
that you know it's whatever's making you happy, then you know that's the best thing to go you know to go with it. Um, but yeah, so like I said, I'm you know most familiar with those three, your three mainstream. Um, you know, I'll see when I go to the store, and that Thursday before you know before page two, I'll probably end up picking up a few things while I'm there as well. And
Good.
you know, I talked about the hero coins, and I was like, you know, I'm big on challenge coins. I'm a you know U.S. Army veteran, you know, have several challenge coins that I got throughout my military career. And then when I went to a recent convention in ShireCon, that was the first one where they were giving out these coins as well. And I was like, oh, this is such a, you know, just a cool thing. And
Yeah.
then when I go to your storefront and looking, I was like, wow, he has, you know, I call them challenge coins. You call them hero coins.
Hmm.
But I was like, oh, I'm definitely getting one of those you know, and you know the way that I use them is that it's not at the gaming table that you're necessarily going to use them. It's when you're at the bar after you know the convention, and then you just slap them down. It's like
Behold.
yeah, and the way that they work is if you slap it down and someone matches, you end up buying the beer,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, or vice versa, however you want to use them. But yeah, there's a variety of ways to utilize them for that purpose. They're basically drinking games, you know,
Isn't
kind of
everything?
yeah. So, so let's talk a little bit about so Crown and Skull Volume Two.
Yes. Behold. There it is. It is done. So right now it's just the excruciating process of doing like documents and watching the boat bring the first print run
Mm,
over to the States. Um, and in the past year have learned a little bit about the first print run. Like earlier in this process of mine, the first print run was everything. Like it was all encompassing. But when you kind of get going a little better with more momentum, the first print run is kind of like the warm up run.
mhm.
And then that second print run is really the one where you want to hit the home run. And so very, again, like, I don't know why, but the cosmos is insisting on teaching me patience. I don't like it. I'm not a fan, but we're in that phase. So the book is completely done, and it is basically a couple of decades after the first book on the timeline. And due to some events that were kind of played by my players last October, the sort of narrative of the book kind of took on a different angle. Basically, one of the sort of dragons, this noble silver dragon named Varthisian, is like, as part of trying to incite a civil war, is like butchered. And this has never really happened before, where like a dragon is basically cut up, you know, like livestock and distributed, like the parts are sort of sold on the
Oh
market.
wow,
And
never
this
heard.
is so bad that all of the rest of sort of dragon kind wakes up to take their retribution on everyone. And so uh, dragons in role playing obviously are, like peanut butter and jelly kind of thing, as far as, it's like the mac and cheese of role playing. And so I came into that. I kind of did a short YouTube video on this, but really was trying to treat it with a new and different approach. I've often felt that like dragons are constantly mentioned in a lot of campaigns or in sessions, but you seldom get a nice, clean way to go confront one. And so I tried to do this book with each different dragon on the sort of dragon family tree
Right.
has a location where you can go and like do the thing. And some of the dragons are friends, some of them are enemies, some of them are kind of neutral. But there's a discrete spot that you can just go so that you can kind of like blow away a lot of this kind of fog that keeps, I think, a lot of characters from getting like the dragon experience, which to me is like a bucket list item for role playing. Like,
Yeah.
you really want to do not just, oh, there's a dragon cult and we see him gliding overhead and stuff, but like directly confronting with, the biggest of them,
Yeah.
and dealing with how big and powerful they are, and how they do spawn cults and have these whole like sort of area complexes where they live and influence things. And like, so I tried to create, there's really 9 of those in the book. And then there are 4 sort of slightly smaller kind of dungeons, I guess you would call them,
Right.
that are kind of attached. But really, each one, if you really want to be super cheesy and simple about it, it's a dragon who has a location, and then you kind of worm your way through that location, and there they are, or they're at the beginning, or whatever. But that's really what the book is, and then all the tables and the equipment and the craziness that goes with that. And the dragons are found in all kinds of loony places. Like one of them is in like a buried spaceship. And then one of them is kind of like the Joker in a way. And he's sort of indestructible and he kind of crazy. And like, one of them's in like a flying kind of time machine castle that like this dragon Paramus is trying to use time to avoid like this inevitable disaster. And then at the end of the book is the biggest one, which is a big, like sort of tri-level kind of tower mountain dungeon, with the biggest sort of cataclysmic dragon thing at the end. And that's kind of going to set the tone for volume 3.
Oh, so there will be a volume 3. All right. So that's also good to hear.
Yeah, there's 5 volumes of Crown and Skull, and that was the agreed upon sort of goal when I set out to them, is I was going to do 5 books, each one released at the end of January on a 1-year schedule, and they would kind of take you to all these places. So the readers who have already got the PDF of Crown and Skull 2 will notice that like sci-fi elements are creeping in. And so like this is sort of always my kind of statement, right? It's like sci-fi and fantasy kind of go hand in hand. And I always kind of take you on this trip like I did in ICRPG, like we always start in fantasy and we kind of work our way into sci-fi, and then we end up in sort of the weird or in the massive.
Yeah.
And we'll do that again with Crown and Skull.
Wow. So 1 book a year. That's pretty aggressive, and just trying to, that I'm sure that really pushes your time management to get all of that done.
Yeah. Well, and you really have to keep like, you have to do your dishes every single day, creatively speaking. So you can't leave a sort of an idea in your brain and let it cook. It's almost, you don't have the privilege to do it. So like as I was doing the refinement process on Crown and Skull Volume 2, meaning the creative heavy lifting is done. You're now cleaning it up. You're looking for inconsistencies. This is kind of, you're critiquing it. But then that's the morning. Then in the afternoon, you've got to do your dishes on the next volume, meaning get the outline going and get like the building blocks, and play with the mechanics, get your dice out and kind of screw around a little bit. And when about 3 o'clock comes, you're kind of spent, and go have a beer, take a break, get away from it, do the same thing the next morning.
We have a comment here. So from Roger. So it saddens me that fantasy and sci-fi have been separated.
Oh, they've not been separated. Whoever
Yeah.
told you that was giving you a silly hot take. That is
Yeah.
not real.
Um, yeah, there's there's plenty of examples of crossover between the two as well. Going back to you know very beginnings of the sci-fi fantasy writing. I mean, there's always been mixes and everything.
Absolutely.
I'm a big Robert E. Howard fan, and he was combining, he was combining fantasy with eldritch horror.
Oh yeah.
Genres just naturally mix, very well together. I mean, you can even, you know, I mean, you can even get romance and horror to mix as well. I mean, there's
All
plenty of
romance is horror, Richard. We know that.
it's like
There, that's
so
that'll be on my epitaph right there.
yeah.
But no, I think Roger brings up something that's on my mind a ton lately, which is that I think like our exaggerated hot takey culture right now
Mhm.
is confusing like the is verb with like an experience of style. And like we experience all kinds of styles of people and of, in our case, hobbies and games. And we may experience them on the internet or in person or whatever, but then they become like an is, and it's like,
Right.
I really want to like, I know maybe this sounds like splitting hairs from an old person, and that's who I am now, but I really feel it's important to remember that what people are encountering is just the style that happens to be in front of them. It does not mean that it is that way.
Mm.
Like it's kind of like there's so many hot takes these days of like this, that, or the other system is fast, slow, deadly, not deadly, right? So there are
Right.
these two-sided statements. This, that, or the other game or book is do do
Mm.
do 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 do. And I really think it's just hugely misguided. I think all that's really being said is when we played blah blah blah, the style we did was deadly. Like you can play first edition D&D and make it not that deadly. You can play 5th edition and make it deadly as hell and
Yeah.
super fast and
Yeah.
like there is no blaming the books. And I think just to bring it back to Roger's statement, thank you, Roger, for throwing up such a cool topic
Yeah.
inadvertently, maybe,
Mm.
which is you can't blame the books or the GMs or whatever for not mixing sci-fi and fantasy. Like the mix is there and it's ripe to be done.
Yeah.
Like it's us who do it, and it's
Mm.
a style. Like no book or object or system or whatever can be blamed
Mm.
for the lack of blending, because I agree with you, Roger. They should not be separated. They're
Yeah.
the oldest of friends, and keeping old friends apart, as we all know, is not cool.
Yeah. Some already mentioned like Hyperborea does that mix. So you have that with Hyperborea, which is a great system too. I played that for the first time. Jeff Talanian running the game, so that was phenomenal too. A phenomenal experience. A
Yeah.
lot of fun, and that's a great system. And it combines science
Mhm.
fiction and fantasy. I
Yep.
mean,
And Roger, if you're hanging out with people who are not mixing their sci-fi and their fantasy, like that's just on those people.
yeah,
The is not there. So go find some crazy knuckleheads who are mixing them together because they mix so well.
yeah,
They just belong together. I mean, even in the most mainstream of things that we look at in our hobby, they go together. If you look at the titans of our hobby, which I would say are Warhammer and D&D,
yeah,
they both freely flow between sci-fi and fantasy spaces.
yeah.
And they should, because it's dope.
Probably more
So,
so Warhammer than D&D, but yes, I mean, you have Spelljammer, and you have, but Pathfinder has, what
oh
I
well, if you mean Starfinder, sure. Yeah,
Starfinder.
and
It's
same with
Pathfinder.
Spelljammer.
Isos is Starfinder,
Yeah.
and you have, Spelljammer for D&D. I mean, the sci-fi connection was made to D&D with the Barrier Peaks module by Gary Gygax in
Yeah.
the early '80s.
And Isle of the Toads by Arneson. where there's a
Yeah,
cracked spaceship and there are ray guns
yeah,
in module B1 or whatever.
yeah, yeah, and it's like, yeah. So there's always been that connection, um, and so it's certainly they should not be separated as Brandon is saying, and it's up to you as a game master to include it.
Yeah, or as a player
Yeah, or as
to
a
holler
player.
at your friends, yeah, and just be
Yeah.
like, "Yo, I was watching Secret Level last night,
Mhm.
and that Warhammer segment was so sick, but it
Yeah.
had like a fantasy vibe to it. Can we get into that a little bit?" And the GM will be like, "Hold my beer."
Yeah.
Like all you got to do is a buried spaceship. One person needs a chain sword. You find one like sort of heavy, like a bolter weapon, like that crazy movie Kin. If any of you have seen that, it's just a kid that finds this one gun. It's like only one artifact from sci-fi world, but that's all it takes. Or look at like Horizon on PlayStation, like it's
Right.
this tribal world that has these like Zoids in it and stuff, and it's just perfect. It's like having steak and potatoes.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
endings are
there's plenty of
great.
examples of it, so it's, and, well, with with it, like index card RPG, I mean, you have the different settings that you can, run the game in as well. And so,
Yep.
very, very easy to combine it up. You have other games like, uh, Wedding just came into my mind. So you have, Never Going Home is,
Oh
another
yeah,
great,
yeah.
yeah, another great combination of World War I and post-apocalypse, and
Hmm.
or like a zombie apocalypse kind of thing coming together all at the same time with some Cthulhu mythos kind of aspects to it as well. So you
We're
actually have
really latching
different
onto your
genres
comment,
coming
Roger.
together in that. Yeah, so it's a you know before that, we played skirmish games mixing those elements. One famous was Fantasy versus World War II
Oh yeah,
Germans. Wizard won. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
World War II sci-fi fantasy mixture is maybe almost even more common
yeah,
than like medieval fantasy and sci-fi. Like everybody likes to think about super technology blasting
yeah,
blasting the Nazis. This got
yeah.
a little weird on it, but
Yeah, I
there it
forget
is.
which video game it was where you were killing the Nazis, and then all of a sudden you were killing zombies. It shifted.
Oh yeah, Wolfenstein.
Wolfenstein. Yeah, so Wolfenstein was
Hell yeah,
the one that introduced that genre, if you want to call it a genre. Never Going Home has great mechanics as well. Yes, um,
yeah. And
having to
Overlord
sacrifice
was part of
memories
that
of home to
mythos, and
survive
like
the war.
yeah, but even Hellboy is part of that mythos.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Hellboy is that more eldritch horror kind of mysticism kind of mix in there, and you get, you know, that's also very, Howard writing as well. He
Oh
did,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, like
um,
guys with like Ruger pistols, and then there's also a
yeah,
teleportation portal.
yeah, it's,
Because because hell yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Because it's awesome.
I've been, uh, I've been messing around more with just adding a certain amount of weirdness to the adventures that I have my Castles and Crusades group running through, and so it's just I want to put a little twist to things and everything. I haven't had sci-fi yet, but just kind of weird fantasy kind of things that I've been trying to just throw at them,
Mm.
every once in a while. So to subvert those, expectations and such, and just give them a very different experience and a weird thing. So
Yep.
I always look to introduce those things. Now I'm starting to do a lot of Weird West stuff, and you can go crazy with with Weird Western as
Oh yeah.
well. So my introduction to that was Weird Frontiers, which is a DCC based, system. And I know you have some. There's some transference of DCC kind of, aspects into your games as well. So let me get to that. Like, so what are some of the game systems that inspire your game systems?
This is the most terrifying question ever. I mean, it's hard to give credit to everybody where credit is due,
Right.
but it's always worth trying. Um, and I know that more acutely now that I can see sort of some of my influence in
Oh,
works that come out. So I really you become more acutely aware of like how important credit really is, not for monetary gain, but just for spiritual satisfaction.
hmm.
But yeah, I was definitely influenced by DCC and in specific the DCC book Hubris. Um, and then when I was in my formative kind of period, which would be 1986 to 2012, um, I started on TMNT, GURPS, and Rifts, and then eventually found my way to D&D and to Fantasy Hero, um, and then into newer D&D. The Cyclopedia was one of the probably the books I played the most.
Hmm.
Probably played Cyclopedia D&D, like one book D&D from I don't know, from like 91 to 96, like continuously. We were
Yeah.
living in the dorms and stuff, like it's insane.
Mhm.
Um, and then I never really got into the splinter sort of side of the hobby because the hobby to me in the early 2000s became a little more unified, and the
Right.
splintering seemed a little less. Like in the 80s and 90s, it was vastly splintered, like with Paranoia and
Mhm.
Bolt Action and like Ogre and GURPS, and it was kind of all over the place. And then
Right.
Symbiotia's work and Rifts, and but then it kind of unified a little bit. There was a bit of a monopoly of D&D. It felt like to me that may be an illusion, but it felt that way to me. And that was during, like 3.5 when we had the cool books with the gems on the covers.
Yeah.
Then getting into 4E, which we loved. I thought 4E was super cool because of Warcraft and they tied together, and we
Hmm.
loved that. But then I returned to the splinter side of the hobby, meaning, lots of different RPGs when Burning Wheel came out. So that must have been 2011 or so. At
Right.
least, at least for me, I think it might have been a couple of years before that, but that's when I discovered Burning Wheel. And Burning Wheel like broke my brain utterly, and then returned me with force to the hobby because I had been really busy doing concept art in like the console industry,
Right.
video game industry, and had been fully immersed in that. And then when I found Burning Wheel, I kind of started leaning a little bit away from being professional and working so much, and kind of started returning to the hobby life of like collecting books, and then that's when it really spiraled a lot. So it would be hard for me to list like all those books between Burning Wheel and publishing ICRPG. That's when I was really like stacking my library like crazy.
Right.
So everything that came out in that period, I had. Um, but things influenced me in different ways, and nothing ever influenced me as much as what we would play. So I would read a million things, like Dungeon World was a big influence,
Mhm.
not because we would ever play anything like that, but it just showed a different mindset, and that was like giving me a little more license and a little more confidence to say like, hey, we do things a little differently around here. And
Yeah.
we had been playing like room targets for years.
Mm.
And everyone that I had played with was over the moon about it, like, oh my gosh, like this is so clean and so cool. But it wasn't until maybe Dungeon World, Burning Wheel, some of the like Perilous Wilds, even though it's a very small book, like really influenced me a lot. And some of these things came together to make me feel like I think like room targets and timers and like consolidating damage into categories, which those are some of the biggest things in ICRPG. Like
Yeah.
maybe I should, sort of yell at the world about it,
Mm.
and so that's where I owe those creators,
Mm.
like Coble and Sage Latora and Luke Crane and all the guys at DCC,
Yeah.
and everyone who wrote fourth edition as well. Like I owe them a big debt, not necessarily in my mind creatively, but
Mm.
just the energy to do it and
Yeah.
to the confidence to say, hey, world, here's yet another RPG. But the will to do that and to overcome that opening hesitation, that's where I owe them that biggest debt.
Yeah.
Um, So I hope they know that.
Yeah, so here's Paul. Hey, how's it going, Paul? So he's loving Crown and Skull. Um, and he started the hobby with After the Bomb and
Yeah,
GURPS Auto Duel. All right,
yeah,
that's a real. I haven't heard that game in a long time. Auto Duel.
for sure.
Um,
Yeah,
and back then, like you said, I mean, the '80s as a a teenager of the '80s, and I played from '77 to '89. Before I took a break
hmm,
from tabletop role playing, and we played everything. I mean, we had three game masters in my group of 5 to 6 players, and each one kind of ran different set of games.
yep,
And we were playing 6 days a week.
yep.
4 or 5 hours a day. There was no time for homework. When I was a teenager, there was never did homework. It was always gaming, and that's back in the '80s where we were all feral anyway, so our parents were never looking for us. It was like,
Absolutely, it's
and
real too.
yeah,
It's
you know,
becoming a bit of a myth, but it was absolutely real.
yeah. Oh no, there was on the weekend it was like you were out of the house by 9 a.m. And you weren't expected to come back in until about 10 or 11. In the
Yep.
evening, you just came home for dinner. That was the only thing, and then you could go back out again. But anyway, I mean, we played everything.
Yeah.
Virtually everything from TSR that was out, everything from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to GURPS to just so many different game systems out there. And then my particular group, we kind of gravitated to certain ones that represented each of the genres, right? So I stuck with villains and vigilantes. Wasn't a big fan of Champions or I think Heroes was out around the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Champions. We
Tried
definitely played
Champions, but
champions.
didn't like. I liked Villains and Vigilantes a lot better. Um, Star Frontiers was our space action, although
Oh
one
yeah.
of them, one of our game masters, he loved Gamma World, so we always played Gamma World with him as well. AD&D was our staple through the '80s, so that was our Dungeons and Dragons fix. And Call of Cthulhu was another big one for us. uh, Twilight 2000 was my jam, and I attribute joining the army in 1990 due to Twilight 2000 and the fact that my father was a World War II vet. You know, without Twilight 2000, I probably would have not joined in 1990. So I
Crazy.
attribute my entire military career to having played game mastered Twilight 2000 for a couple years leading into that. So it's a calling mothers of I like this one. Calling mothers against Dungeons and Dragons down to report me. Yeah, my mother was not concerned at all with any of that stuff, and you know, the Satanic Panic did not touch me in any particular way at all.
Hmm.
It was just not something that my parents actually cared about. So it was not. I mean, I was listening to I was doing everything that I should have been a Satanist. I was listening to heavy metal. I was smoking as a teenager, and I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. So I should have been Tom Hanks in the sewers, according to them. So it's
I mean,
but
I do think that what's great about all that nostalgia is that despite what things felt like, at least to me and my circle in the early 2000s, we totally did return to a widely splintered hobby, I think. Um,
yeah,
I mean, obviously we have Titans, and I can tell you, owning a shop, the Titans are real.
yeah,
They are absolutely real, and it's okay, and it's totally great.
mhm,
Uh, but I do think it's almost maybe even more splintered than it was back then. The only I don't know what you think, Richard, but the only difference is like the availability of information in today's splintered hobby, I think is a bit of a disservice to it. I think it's there's a lot of ways to discover all these different splinters and side roads
Mhm.
where you don't actually have to go do it. So you can just sort of, oh, you're curious about Twilight 2000, whatever. You kind of just look at a video and you feel pretty satisfied. You're like, oh, okay, that's what that's about. And you kind of move on. But one thing that I do, I don't know if I would use the word miss, but one thing that I did like about that older era was to find out about a thing, you kind of have to do it. You need to go get it and get it in your house with your friends and learn it like yourself. There was no outside information source
Yeah.
on any of it. Like, and even a lot of people, at least I don't know about you, but around me, a lot of people didn't even know what it was that we were doing. They thought it was like comic books. They
Yeah,
they never, and that was cool. Now I'm not
yeah.
saying let's go back or anything, but I do think that nowadays, um, the splintering of our hobby is a lot of like press. It's a lot of like adjacent talking. Um, and I really am a huge advocate for, like, if you're curious about a thing, like, get it and do it.
Yeah.
And get out of this habit a little bit of getting hot takes and reviews and
Mm.
class guides and like opinions on talking heads on YouTube, which ironically we're doing at this moment.
Yeah.
But I really do mean that. Like, if you really want
Yeah.
to sort of get the feel of the nostalgia that you're talking about,
Yeah.
a big part of it is the getting and the doing. Not
Oh
the
yeah.
era, not the era that you're in. It could be any era.
Yeah.
It's just more like get in there and do it. And that, to me, that's one of the biggest differences of back then. It
Well, yeah,
wasn't that
back
we were
then there was
poor.
no well, there was no internet back then,
Yeah,
obviously. So there was no there you only could do it. You know what
yeah.
I'm saying? There was no I mean, I guess you could read someone else's copy of it, and never actually engage in it yourself. But that's
Still, but that's having it in your hands.
yeah, that's still
Yeah,
having it in your hands. There was no other, there was no other way.
yeah.
Um, that's why I'm a big proponent of going to conventions. If you're going to a convention as a player, uh, don't go there and play something that you just played last week, and you've been playing for 3 years. Go there and play 5 new game systems that you've never seen or heard of before,
Hmm.
and go there as a learning experience,
Sure.
and that's, to me, I always say on my channel, broaden your horizons. I mean, it's something that Gary Gygax wrote in his, you know, in his 2 books, the one for players and the one for game mastery. And I mean, he literally said, go out there and play as many different game systems as you can, play in as many different modes as you can. So, not if you're just playing in your home, you're shortchanging yourself. Go to a gaming store, go to a library, go to a convention,
Yeah.
and just experience as much of this hobby as you can. And you're going to grow. You're just going to grow as not just as a gamer, but I think you're going to grow intellectually as far as gaming is concerned too. I mean, you can see behind me, I have a lot of game systems behind me. 60% of them I've never run before. You know what I'm saying? But I like to have them on my shelf, and I've read through probably 80% of them. There's still some that I haven't gotten to, and I look at it as an academic, right? I want to learn from these various systems, and then once I become comfortable with them, certainly once I've played them, then I'm looking to run them. And I have too many games I want to run, and just not enough time and not enough conventions to go to actually run them all. But yeah, I mean, as far as fractured is concerned, within our hobby, or just having, what I hear a lot is there's too many choices out there, and to me, you can never have too many choices.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel the same way,
Yeah. That's
but
like how bands are nowadays too. I mean,
yeah,
there are so many bands.
yeah,
And so what you'll hear sometimes, and I talked about this on my podcast, what you'll hear is like a shelling up as a response and being like, oh yeah, there are no more cool mega bands, like the age of mega bands is over, and like I was cool because I listened to Pink Floyd or whatever.
Yeah.
But the real truth is it just takes a little bit more work to sift through the zillions of bands, and they're so damn good. There's
Yeah.
so much amazing music. If you're really into music nowadays, it's freaking glorious compared to 20 years ago or whatever, as far as being able to explore. And I think it's a little bit the same in what we're doing. And I wanted to jump on you a little bit there, Richard, too, is a lot of what you're describing, like with sort of Gygax's call to expand horizons, that is for like the aspirant, and like the seeker in our hobby. And really quick, I just want to raise my hand for the legions of people who are not seekers in this hobby. They are having a perfectly good time chilling right in their one little lane. And I, especially having the shop, I interact with a lot of those people, and they're great. They're totally groovy. And so I always want us to remember that, yeah, some of us want to be like hobby craftsmen. We want to know all the ins and outs, collect the books, approach it as a scholar, take it to the limit. But there should always be another mug raised for, the people who just come through and play once a month or whatever, and they play for a couple of years and they never even return to it. And that's totally cool. Like, rock on with your bad self. Like, I think that we overlook those people way too often. And one of the things that I've really, probably the single biggest learning or consciousness expanding experiences of having a brick and mortar shop is the difference between internet hobbyists and real life, like live action people who want to do role playing hobbies. And they are so totally different. And a con, I'm going to have to say, doesn't quite count. The con to me represents a lot of the internet demographic. It's very intensely focused people who are really into it. But at my shop, you can just be walking down the sidewalk, getting a pastry, and come on in and be curious about what's going on.
Oh, so you get casuals like just walk in and, hey, what's the shop about? And
absolutely. And there's
really?
a huge spectrum of this kind of person. And I would only say that the sort of casual stereotype is only a one tiny color in this spectrum. They range all the way from like what we call like the comical normies. So a comical normie is someone who like looks in our shop and just is utterly baffled and slightly scared. They do not want to mess with this stuff. Like, it is just weird. But then there's a huge range of people that then goes to someone who's like a Runehammer fan, who's, on the internet and is like looking for something special or something very specific, or even making a special order, or wants to set up a session or whatever. And that spectrum is so big and diverse. And that has been what's really like been consciousness expanding to me in the last 3 months. And in a really, really positive way. I gotta say, shame on you, internet. The internet does not offer a ton of positive vibes, honestly. It has there's a weird parasocial thing going on. And it has its bright spots, don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of like anonymity nastiness on the internet, and it just does not happen in person.
No, that's
even be the same person. You could even have the same person who's nasty in a comment, and then they will come in and look at you face to face and be the nicest person.
Well, because they
like, whoa, what is that? Like, I don't even know what to call that.
They become humanized in person.
Yeah.
And people don't recognize, like, I'll be the first to admit, I am far more capable of being an asshole on the internet than I am in person. It's much more rare to me, for me to be, an asshole in person. But when I am, it's like top notch. It's like, wait,
I think that's true of a lot of people. I think that's a very common
I've met people I've met people that are like industry people, that are really well-known people, where online it's like, oh, I would never want to, associate with this person or deal with this person. And then I meet them in person and it's like, wow, he's nowhere near like what he
He's a chill
is
dude.
on, online. And, it was, I mean, I'll say it like the first time that I met Jeff D in person, which was at Page last. Well, I keep on saying last year. That was January. To me, January is still last year.
Yeah.
Uh, and totally different than his online persona. And I call it that. I call it's an online persona. I'm sure that he probably doesn't even recognize it. Like I said, it's like
Mhm.
that. He's two different people, in comparison to the two,
Yeah.
experiences. So it's a like I said, I mean, that's the dark side of the internet, is that we're not our true selves for the most part
Yeah.
when we're
Which,
online.
which hey, if anybody's watching, thinking about this,
Mm.
um, it shouldn't be taken the wrong way, like doom and gloom. The
Yeah.
reason that I bring it up is that I personally,
Mm.
me, not even I'm not even generalizing this to anyone else. I have been personally discovering this difference
Mm.
in the past 3 months, like one person at a time.
Yeah.
And some weekends, like this last weekend, it's crazy. Like, a ton of PAX people came through. We were talking our ears off all weekend and playing games all weekend, and like it was nutty. And then
Mm.
other times, my favorite times, to be honest, the shop is more like a workshop. It's very quiet,
Mm.
and there's one person, maybe per hour, and they're kind of, chilling in one of our reading chairs or something like that. But I'm really like finding this, and it in some ways is exactly what I had hoped to discover. I wanted to
Right.
kind of come out of my internet shell. I wanted
Mhm.
to make a statement in a neighborhood. And maybe, is my city like the coolest city? Is this like the coolest neighborhood? Is this like the ultimate? No, it's just where I live,
Right.
and just embrace whoever happens to be here in whatever condition they happen to be in. And that change has been so huge for me. Um, it's almost hard to even put into words. Instead of this before, I was very much like, almost like, well, I had a mentor in my past who once said that, you never yell at the sky for not giving you a sandwich.
Hmm.
And I was a little bit doing that with the internet. I felt like I was doing really good work. I was extremely proud of my work and proud of its place in the sort of cosmology of our hobby. And I felt like, man, I waited 30 years of working in the creative industry to feel like I had the confidence to come forward and do it. And I still remained a little bit on the sort of indie fringe, and I remain there to this day.
Right.
And I was kind of hollering at the internet and getting more and more frustrated with it. Then fast forward a little bit and come here, and when people come into the shop, and it slowly dawns on them that this one whole bookcase that we have is all my work. There's like, I'm back to the beginning. I'm back to being like, hell yeah, man, that put a big smile on a person's face.
Right.
They kind of couldn't believe it, and they're kind of great, and they walked out of here with Viking Death Squad or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's one customer, it's one sale. So on the internet, you're getting thousands of sales.
Right.
And I feel like even with the thousands, you don't get the feeling of that one customer. And
Yeah, you're not getting the
that's
interaction.
where I'm like thriving nowadays.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that makes me even more excited to go there on that Thursday, first day of the con. Is like, that's why I was like, oh, what time does it open? And what time do I? So I have to leave my house around like 9 a.m. to get
More
there by
hyperbole. It's
12.
paradise.
Yeah, it'll be a pilgrimage, right? A pilgrimage to the site, and so great to hear about the story of the building that it's in too. You
Mm.
know, I was going to say while you were going into it, talking about the trucks collapsed in. I was like, oh, you had your post-apocalyptic store set up right there, and that could have been the theme of it. Um, But yeah, that's just I'm really looking forward to it. I'm sure the atmosphere of the place is probably just over the top. And for me, as someone who is a seeker, as you say, I mean, I'm seeking the experience of just seeing how much how much it's going to bring. I think to the hobby, to people coming in. I know we were talking about this before we actually went live. My talking about convention space and how you make your table an advertisement for the game that you're doing, to catch those people as they're walking by,
Hmm.
and seeing something new. And a storefront is very similar to that, right? It's like someone just passing by with a donut and a cup of coffee and says, "Hey, what's
Yeah,
going on in here?" Kind of aspect to it. And I think that's really important for the hobby's health
yeah,
going forward, is to have that kind of a display
yeah.
of
Well, and we
what
are
we're doing.
utterly and in every way different from
Mm,
what I think even the most uninitiated would think about a game shop or a so-called D&D shop.
yeah,
We and almost especially like the sort of the true heads, people who know game shops, when they come in, they are really taken aback
mm,
of just how differently we sort of are. We went with like cozy. Our
yeah,
our our game shop is cozy. There are not like, mountains of inventory where you're going to discover these hidden gems and these
yeah,
vast corridors of books,
mm,
you know. And we literally have two tables. I mean, we have a pretty small little zone, but I think thanks to the effort of Alyssa and thanks to the basically the sort of I guess my experiences at cons and at game stores, which are very seldom positive, that we wanted to switch that playbook up and not
right,
do these vast spaces and these fluorescent lights and all this
yeah,
noise and this, it's like much more homey. And it's still my main critique against the con concept is like, why is it so big and so hotel-y and so brightly lit and so loud and so over the top? Why is it like that? Are you imitating sports? Like what? Why isn't it homey? And I still demand that to the con industry.
yeah.
Why are you hurting people? Like why not make cozy environments and cozy events? And
You
I
think that's
still don't hear that call being
yeah.
answered.
Is that possibly a throwback to the wargaming roots?
I
Just
mean, even then, why war gamers do you have these huge like gymnasiums of plastic tables? Why not be in pleasant spaces?
mm,
Is it a cost issue? Is it what is it? Why do fluorescent lights even exist? Like we have like warm LED lights, we have sustainable Edison bulbs now. Like,
mm.
why are you doing this?
Well,
Why?
most of those halls were, not for nothing. Most of those halls were built back in the '70s, so they
Right,
probably
right.
don't. Yeah.
Well, I say enough. Like let's update. And
So
anybody
your
who knows
storefront
me
is more
knows
like
I'm really
an English study, where
yes,
you'll sit in nice, comfy chairs,
yes.
and
Yeah,
you'll
there's
have
a
your
flickering light,
yeah.
and there's a little light right next to you, which is the light you need to read. And
Hmm.
there are like Persian rugs, and there's a murmur, like
Not a clamor, a murmur, right?
not
It's
a clamor, but a murmur, Richard,
yeah,
and
yes.
it's a solid murmur too.
Uh, yeah. So that's gonna. So actually, let me show off your internet storefront. Um, and let everyone see some of the stuff that you have there, and I will ask about some of the items there, as well. So
Whoa,
let's do this.
this is crazy.
Let me try to share screen.
Brace for goldenrod.
Yes, and there we go.
Oh my
So
God.
so here
That's
we go,
crazy.
everyone. So here is the Runehammer shop,
Oh, that's funny.
and we have a little bit of everything. So this is the Crown and Skull Volume 2. So when do you expect this to be physically, or you can't tell? I'm
I
not sure if
can.
it
They'll
or
ship
not.
out January 25th.
Oh, they'll ship out January 25th.
They
All
will.
right.
So if you pre-order now, all it does is make sure that you get part of the first print run. That's really, if you wanted to, you could just buy a copy on January 25th. But
Okay.
as people learned last time,
Hmm.
you can either miss the gold editions or miss the run entirely.
Oh,
Um,
I'm not going to do that.
if
I'm
you
going to
don't
order
get the
it today.
pre-sale. And the gap between our runs is quite small because we're pretty aggressive with stocking.
Yeah.
So it's not like, pre-sale or die. It just
Yeah.
it helps us make sure that our main fans have a copy waiting for them. That's
Cool.
really all it is. And we try to
Yeah.
keep the gap from the
And
pre-sale moment to the
I will
delivery
make
moment.
sure that I put the gold edition here so that everyone can see that there is a gold edition for this as well. So
Yep.
make sure you match because
Yep. And
I like to match things.
the
And
books are Zach
you can
Stone's
still get
edition.
volume one as well.
What's that?
Your volume one is still in stock.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, cool. All right. I see you have your own dice here. Here's the hero coins.
Mm-hmm.
And I am definitely picking up one of those when I go down there.
Those look
Um,
amazing.
so yeah, they're really awesome. I'm sure that they're a nice heavyweight too, right?
Yeah, they're the thickest, heaviest ones we could get, and they have like ceramic enamel to do the colors.
Oh, nice.
And they're, yeah, made out of two different metals and everything. They're really fun.
Yeah, cool. Then we have
This is
these here.
great.
So Easy D6. So I do not have this yet. So how is Easy D6 different from let's say index card RPG, other
Uh,
than the dice mechanics? But
other than dice mechanics, well, it is a view into the loony brain of DM Scotty.
okay,
He has a really silly but deep imagination that has a very specific tone to it, and these books capture that tone. So if you know DM Scotty and his weird cackling wizardry, these books are cackling at you. Basically,
yeah,
they have a very funny, crazy vibe to them that is totally unique. That's why it was such a pleasure to put in all the work to make them happen.
cool. All right, and then we get to Index Card RPG, the Master Edition, and the I guess that's the original one.
Yep.
Crown and Skull Digital Bundle. We have Maker Battlefield deck.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Warmaker.
Warmaker.
Warmaker is just my card-based simplification of wargaming. So
Oh,
it uses D6 dice pooling and abilities that will honestly be familiar to any Warhammer kind of player or Kings of War player. They're
cool.
just simplified into a deck of cards so you can kind of keep them at the ready on the table. Um, it may or may not be useful to a lot of wargamers. For a lot of wargamers, the joy of the game is in the minutia, and
Hmm.
the minutia is kind of not here. So Warmaker has a tough challenge of making its way into the hobby. I really think that like wargamers really revel in their knowledge of their chosen system.
Okay.
So giving them an alternative has proven pretty kind of difficult.
Okay, and then we have maps.
Ah, yes.
And what's the material of these maps? Different
Glorious.
materials?
Yeah, these are all made out of like sort of super heavy cardstock that comes
Okay.
rolled. So what we do at our tables is we get them out and like scrape them along a table edge to de-roll them,
Ah,
and then you fold them up, and then
I
you
see.
unfold them, and then you fold them again, and then you fold them up, and then you unfold them, and you crumple them a little bit and unfold them. And they're made out of this really tough stuff where they'll not only survive that, but they get really nice and like floppy, almost like a chart on a ship or something.
Ah, all right.
They have a really neat quality to them when you wear them in a little bit. So they're all made out of that same stuff.
Cool. And yep, so there's tons of different varieties. These are all Orlean Peninsula. All right, so Orlean Peninsula, Alfheim. So yep, I'm familiar with some of those. We have Viking Death Squad here. Cypunk Anthology.
Yeah.
So what's Cypunk Anthology?
Well, it was originally meant to only be a physical print, but the readers wanted a PDF of it. But it basically assembles three of my science fiction works into one book, which are Altered State, which is cyberpunk ICRPG, Bearcats, which is a systemless kind of setting guide of like sort of kids in high school versus alien invaders, and then Xeno Dead Zone, which is my thinly veiled aping of xenomorphs and the Alien franchise in sort of a board game kind of milieu. But the hard copy of Cypunk is where it's at.
Cool. All right, and then we're coming to the end here. So we have the Space Fantasy Ship Combat PDF.
Yep, how to do Spelljammer the way that I've done it at my table for a long time with super simple dice mechanics to keep the ship to ship stuff from eating up your time.
So a Shadow Dark Gauntlet for 0 level characters, I'm assuming.
Hey, look at that! It's got 5 stars.
Oh, look at that!
It actually is for any level of character. It's
okay.
It's utterly insane and chaotic, and can range from the stupidly easy to the absolutely impossible. The way that it's built, so very crazy.
The Last Voyage of Finnegan's Pride. So what is this?
Yeah, that's just people wanted an introductory module into Index Card RPG.
Okay.
And this is that introductory module. So it puts you on a boat where we all belong in role playing to kind of learn. And then, of course, you go find a freaky monolith and crazy stuff happens.
Cool. And then another Shadow Dark adventure.
Yeah, Crow's Cage. That was my first one. That's a bit of a Memnon theme for all your Shadow Dark people out there. Memnon's influence keeps making things terrible.
And then we have merch.
And look at all this merch.
Look at all this merch. So dice specific for easy D6.
Yeah, so you can kind of use any for that game, but that makes it easy.
Yeah. And so some shirts and coins, jackets, get a little hoodie.
Yep. Our Runehammer zip hoodies, our war hoodies, I think they're called, is our number one desired thing. War banner hoodie. That is our number one piece of merch.
Really?
Yep. It's got the swords on the sleeves, and people absolutely love it.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, yeah. Let's see. There's the back.
Yeah, and it's really just sort of a, it's kind of made for war gamers, but it really wound up just being our best seller.
Yeah, that's nice. And that's not an unreasonable price either. Just saying, 55 is fine for a hoodie.
Oh yeah, and ever decreasing margin is our world evolved.
So that's the one thing I don't have is a hoodie.
Oh man, we live in that hoodie life over here in Philly.
Yeah. That's not something I ever really had. I mean, it's been so long since I've had a hoodie.
Hey, you're a grown man. You need age appropriate clothing. You don't need a hoodie.
Yeah. The last hoodie I had was my U.S. Army hoodie in 1999. So it's been since 1999. I've probably worn a hoodie.
I've reached hoodie satisfaction. I don't need any more hoodies.
Yeah. So it's I got something going on there.
That was my shop.
Oh.
That's crazy.
Man, that was the intro. Yeah, you know what I have to do? For some reason, you have to do this with YouTube. Is you have to go into it on YouTube on the regular connection to give away memberships. So you can't do it there. So I'm going to give away some memberships for people that are here.
Whoa!
And I will mention out who goes. So JP.
Whoa.
Gotro Kits. I guess that's how you say it. Mobius. How's it going? Jeff H. Patrick. And Dio Das Ferrato. Dos Ferrato.
Dos Ferrato.
Dos Ferrato.
That's the sequel.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that movie. Actually, that opens up Christmas Day. So definitely looking to check out that movie.
Yeah, we got a lot of goodies coming up. We got the Rohirrim movie. We got Nosferatu. We got Secret Level just came out. So many
uh,
goodies.
Peter Jackson's doing the Cimmerils, the Cimmerillion.
Oh man,
Uh, I don't know.
when's
That's
it gonna stop?
that's one of the toughest books to read and to even listen to.
Oh, I
It's just
love it. I've read it like five
I
times.
know it's but you really end up walking away from reading that and thinking, wow, elves could really be assholes too. It's like they could be real evil bastards as well. It
Yeah, but
definitely
Fingalfin is
shatters.
dope.
What's that?
Yeah, but Fingalfin is dope.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, wow. I mean, this this did not translate from from Tolkien's work to Dungeons and Dragons with elves. Certainly not early on. I mean, they made it like all elves were at worst chaotic good. In D&D
Oh
and
man, they have always, since I was a kid, since I was like 13, the elves have always been the darkest force in our world.
really, all right, yeah,
Always.
because it was
And so nasty because they got too much money
yeah.
and it makes them mean.
And they have too much time on their hands,
Too much
right? So
time on
they,
their hands. They
yeah.
got too many sculptures and it makes them jerks.
Yeah, but the Silmarillion, reading that, I was like, oh my gosh! I mean, they're really petty, and they're
Oh yeah, they go at it.
and jealousy and all kinds of stuff going on with them.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, all right, that definitely gives you a different impression of them. So so yeah, so
Even in Crown and Skull Volume 2, if you're looking for evil elves, you will find them in abundance.
oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear. So I'm good with crazy, not good elves. Yeah,
Elvis.
Elvis.
He is famous among their people.
Yeah.
They love.
So so convention wise, so you're obviously going to Page.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
going to be there on Sunday to do a little panel with Kelsey and maybe just meet a few people and say hi to everybody and whatnot. And that's about it.
yeah, yeah. So really looking forward to that as well. Yeah, I know. I have to bring some stuff. I'm running Shadow Dark, like 3 sessions of Shadow Dark while I'm there. So it's like, and then when it was just announced the other day, and actually Ron is coming on to my channel tonight for a live stream. So he was going to be with me a couple weeks ago, and then he had a job related issue. So he's going to come on tonight and talk about it. I'm sure he'll mention that Kelsey will be there. And so I was like, oh, now I have to bring both of my books to get them signed. And I'm going to be running, her game system there. So the pressure will be on. But I'm running 2 games written by Tom Wilson. So Tom is the individual that runs ShireCon. And so I'm running 2 of his adventures and then one that I wrote myself. And then I got a Gangbusters BX game that I'm running. Although that's not booked yet, so I got to talk to Ron and say, how do I get more people to sign up for that one? I guess there's too much going on Saturday afternoon or evening, and too many people signed on afterwards that are. I can definitely see why people want to sign up for those ones. I know I jumped on. Zeb Cook's game. I was like, oh, you gotta meet him, and he's running an Oriental Adventures game session. So I was like, all right, I gotta definitely sit in on that.
Do we still
So
say Oriental Adventures?
yes, we could still say Oriental Adventures. Like I
Okay.
said, I am a an ardent free speech advocate, and so it's like I don't. I will say Oriental. If we could still say Oriental rugs, all right, we can still say Oriental adventures.
Okay, Persian rugs.
Persian. Well, those are different, So, but
But yeah, the page got vastly bigger than it was before. It
oh yeah, yeah. I
grew
mean, it's
20x its previous size. So
yeah,
yeah, you gotta let me know what it's like.
yeah. It's going to be. I think it's. I'm hoping it's not too big. For my taste. My taste is around, three, 400. I know it's double that size. So I know. I think he said he's the last time I checked in, it was like 900 badge sales.
Yeah.
So it's easily double the size that it was last year. So hopefully they have plenty of space, So I think that they'll be fine,
Sweet.
But yeah, hopefully it doesn't get too much bigger. I've been hearing stories about PAX Unplugged and how big that is, and the fact that you have to wait, hours just to get a potential slot, in a gaming thing. And I was like, nah, I'm used to Comic Cons at the Javits Center in New York City. Even though it's been a couple years since I've gone to one with 60,000 people in one day, and I was like, I just can't do that anymore. I don't have the capacity to deal with crowds like that, any longer. Talk about you know, uh, the there's certainly not a murmur, in those situations. It's like you can't even think, they're so loud. So, yeah, yeah, cozy game conventions would be a nice thing. That's maybe that could be your next project, is putting together a game convention that's cozy.
No. I have gone to lengths that most people don't even want to think about so that I can not screw around with the con scene. Like that's
Yeah,
why this building was created. All this
yeah,
work was put in so that we could do our thing with the public here in a non-con environment.
mhm, yeah. But you've been to, obviously, to conventions before and everything. I'm sure you've probably
Absolutely.
gone to like Gen Con and
Hmm.
all the big ones, right?
Yeah. My first con was like probably StarCon and the first season of Next Generation Star Trek.
Okay.
So that was probably like 88.
Mm-hmm.
Was the first con I ever went to. That's when I met Jonathan Frakes at that convention.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah,
So yeah, I've been to a few.
yeah, yeah. I met my first con was Gen Con 18 when it was in Milwaukee,
Yeah.
and I met Gary Gygax. Um, I met all of the Dragonlance people. Actually, Gary Gygax asked he asked Tracy Hickman if he had a VIP dinner ticket for me, and gave me one. So I sat with a group of just luminaries of Dragonlance, and Douglas Niles. Just to give you a connection, like you like the fantasy sci-fi connection. He spent the entire evening talking about time travel in and how to integrate that into Dungeons and Dragons or just adventure gaming, and we kept on circling around the one problem of time travel is the creating the time loop, and my only experience, I was 18 years old, my only experience was the short story. I always forget if it was Ray Bradbury or Arthur C. Clarke. I think it was Bradbury, where the guy goes hunting for a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he steps off the platform and kills a butterfly, thus the butterfly effect. And it was just such a great experience to hear people thinking about those kinds of things, and it was just a great con experience. And then my next con wasn't until other than Comic Cons, but my next con wasn't until recently. Really, it was maybe 2015. So I went literally 30 years
Mm.
without going to a convention, and now I'm just into small. cozier cons. 100 people, 300 people, so yeah, this is going to be a big con,
Yeah.
page two. So be curious to see how much different the feel is,
We shall see.
in that comparison.
We shall see.
Yeah. So let's see how you. It depends on how you plan. Yeah. PAXU. The PAX sign up app is not great. Well, yeah, it makes it hard to plan when the app isn't good, for setting it up. Um, so, what's next for? What's your next big project now? Other than the one book a year, which is crazy to
Yeah.
begin with, but
The next big project will probably be like moving to the mountains. Like this is one project. So this
Mhm.
is a 5-year journey,
Right,
just like Star Trek. Um, so we'll be done in 2030. Um, Not done, but we'll do that first 5 years. And if the shop is going strong, then we'll happily let it keep going. But really, the project is to enjoy and support the community for 5 years, and also to like grow a generation of hobbyists. I have my Sparrows Guild group, which is 8 kids, and they range from like 8 to 12.
nice.
Um, and they'll be like teenagers by the time this is done with its first 5 years. So that's kind of crazy. Um, and like, that was a service that was extended to me as a young kid, of like long
Right,
before like Magic the Gathering kind of vastly changed the landscape of shops. And they became what they are today. It was very different, at least in my town. So that's part of the project. Another part of the project is just to gain some satisfaction on sort of returning to the hobby as it stands, rather than like what I'm at times trying to make it.
hmm
And those are very different things.
right,
Like as a shop owner, you really do need to face with a realistic, kind of sober view what really is happening. You can't sort of ramrod it into what do you want it to be. And
right.
and meeting it where it is to me is a project. It's like for 10 years now, I've been trying to change it into what I want it to be,
Right.
via publishing. And not only has that proven to be frustrating in spots because of sort of the social dynamics of our hobby, but has also proven to be, I think, a little bit of a narrow view of it.
Hmm.
And I think getting into meeting a group of people in a specific location as they are, is really, really illuminating. And that's kind of what I want to do for these next few years, is just sort of find out who's right here, right now, and see what they want to do,
That's a really interesting perspective.
and do it. And let's get into it. Like, and I know it's very localist, right? Like the dream of globalism has definitely been on our minds as a
Mhm.
society for a while now. And I still think it's great, and I think it's good for the human race to be global. Um, but I've found that there's a lot of reward in like localism, and just
Mhm.
seeing who's around, and at and anyone who goes to like sort of bars or drinks beer or anything knows that like in different cities, different people just kind of like different stuff,
Right.
and there's no real reason. They just kind of do. Maybe it's familiarity or nostalgia or just random choice, who knows. But learning that and experiencing it firsthand, that's really kind of what I want to do.
Mm.
Rather than sometimes, being a creator, especially in a small team that's, only a few people or whatever, can be a sort of a manic and somewhat self-absorbed kind of process.
Mhm.
And it's fun. Don't get me wrong. I love
Right.
like making books and systems and things like that. But it can be very just like in your head a little bit, and you're kind of always refining this kind of work, and you get that Celebrimbor syndrome, right, where you don't see the fall of a Region outside
Right.
because you're so busy working on the rings. And I think that this is kind of what's next for me, is like learning this next part, like learning who is here at this moment in this community and kind of becoming one with them, and like offering a sort of another space to do things for people in the neighborhood that isn't a bar or a restaurant or a coffee place, you
Yeah.
know, and try to make that happen. Try to make it like a staple of this neighborhood. And that's really is the project.
Yeah.
So I don't really see beyond it right now, except probably being really cooked on the hyper urban lifestyle and, you know, wanting to like go hide in the mountains for a few years. I can predict,
Yeah.
I'm old enough to know that I'll need some mountain time after this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really, really interesting perspective. And to be honest with you, I've never heard anyone ever say that I want to meet the hobby where it's at and
Mm,
not try to put my own imprint on it. Even though you certainly have. I mean,
yeah,
you can't deny that
yeah.
you certainly have not just made like a name for yourself, but your books stand out, as something that is just, people know it, people recognize it, or they certainly appreciate the differences that you find in your game systems.
Mm,
But to be able to say, I want to experience it where it's at now, where without moving it in any, but appreciating it for where it's at right now. I think that's, like I said, a very interesting perspective. I've never
mm,
heard anyone, actually come out and say, I'm not looking to change something that I'm coming into. And I think that's, you know, um, yeah, that localism kind of thing, or just appreciating the hobby for what it is,
yeah.
and what it can offer. And just really stands out as a difference. Again, you're definitely an outside of the box thinker, and I think we're all better for it.
Oh,
So
thank you. I
um,
suppose.
yeah, you've been exposed, yes. But So, as you said, you have uh, four more volumes of Crown and Skull. And we'll certainly look for that evolution. Um, I guess the last one will be more Star Trekky then, right? If you're going more and more technology mix and everything, it'll be fantasy Star Trek esque. But
Well, it gets a
really
little
great.
crazy. The only one that isn't well visualized right now is the fifth volume.
The
So
fifth volume.
everything
Yeah,
else is pretty well planned out.
as long as you don't pull a George Martin, right? And
Where
we
is
never
the
see
fifth
the fifth.
volume?
Yeah, we'll
I
never
don't,
see the last
I
one.
don't know, man. I wrote a lot of books. You guys just chill out. Everybody needs to cut him a break. You know, he's
Yeah,
given us
no,
a great.
I know.
He's given us wonders. I think he
I
can
know.
retire.
Yeah,
Poor guy.
poor. I know.
He's now the poster boy of not finishing. After like some of the most brilliant works of
Oh,
fiction.
I know. I mean, all the books are actually great.
Oh,
It's
that's tough, man.
unfortunately, the television show kind of dropped the ball in the last two seasons.
Oh,
It
it
was
was so
what the
it was
hell?
not good. Yeah. Although the dragon battle in the beginning of the last season was really cool.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
I
one
mean, yeah,
dragon battle does not a good novel make.
yeah. Yeah, there was some bizarre choices in that last
Yeah, she
season.
got a little wacky on us there. She got a
Yeah,
little funky.
yeah. So, and I'm equally surprised at how well the Fallout Amazon treated Fallout. So that was really a good season. I don't know if you watched that at all,
Oh,
but
totally.
that was done well. And now I hear Amazon is going to get Warhammer
I know.
bought
If
it out.
if it's 1/10 of the secret level short film about Warhammer, it will be sick as hell.
Yeah.
Like that video, that short on secret level
Hmm.
is one of the first things I think that has ever, besides maybe the Space Marine games, that have really understood what Warhammer is like.
Right.
Really like, because it is a very unique kind of mix and flavor. And like, man, anyone watching this, if you haven't seen Secret Level, go watch it immediately, especially if you're like a Warhammer fan, D&D fan. the Warhammer thing on there is just it's just everything that's sick about Warhammer, like in 10 minutes. So cool and so quality. So go, Henry Cavill, go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
us wonders. We are ready for it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I will definitely be following that and looking into that. So he was fine basking in the title of the American Tolkien. He can live being called a slouch while sleeping on a pile of money. Yeah.
Ouch.
But he's not driven by money.
Yeah, I don't
You know
think
what
he
I'm
is.
saying? That's the thing.
Yeah.
He's not, I mean, he's not driven by money because he's so filthy rich either. I don't think he's a billionaire or anything like that. He's not like J.K. Rowling that can basically laugh in everyone's face, and not care about any kind of social pushback she gets. It's like, but no, it's just, I guess he just doesn't see that the creativity is not matching what he's looking for it.
Yeah, and
So
he didn't want to speed up to keep up with it. So he asked that
yeah.
they delay the show, and they just didn't want to delay the show. So he's like, all right, well, whatever.
You're on your own. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so I will have to check out the secret level today as well.
Oh
So
yeah.
definitely look into that. And yeah, we shifted gears. We went right to Warhammer. So
Yeah, and
and
Henry
that's
Cavill is legit. Like
oh
he
yeah,
went
he
to
loves
Smallest World, like was his first miniature shop,
yeah.
like one of the oldest ones in the world, really. And like he's definitely legit with it. I don't know if that makes for a great film or not, but at least the legitimacy is there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
shall see once they start delivering lines. Once he says Codex Astartes the 14th time, we'll see if it makes for a cool show.
All right. So anyway, I mean, this has really been, this has been a blast. I really enjoyed, meeting you and talking to you and just, hearing your perspective. And it was, certainly, certainly something that I knew I was expecting it would be, as interesting and exciting as it has been. But, love the story of your store and how it came about. That was something I would have never anticipated talking about.
Oh yeah.
And I'm glad that we did. So it was really good to hear
Yeah, and
the
I'll
journey.
see you in January when you stop by.
Yes, yes, I will certainly be there on Thursday. So Thursday, 12 o'clock. I'm planning on being there again. Hopefully, weather. Gosh, I really do hope. I hope for global warming when I have
Oh,
January
it's here. Don't
convention.
worry. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no winter anymore in Philly,
yeah,
so you'll be fine.
yeah. I don't know. I just don't trust it. I just don't trust it. I was like, knowing my luck, there'll be another snowstorm. On that day. I'm just knocking on wood the whole time, just waiting to, hopefully get there and not have a problem.
Oh, you'll
Um,
pull through. You'll be all right.
yeah, yeah. Well, I know like Erie County got blasted 2 weeks ago or something like that. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
not.
crazy. The saying "It's always sunny in Philadelphia" is 100% real.
Yeah.
So when that storm was happening, we were all just like, "Let's walk to the bar."
Yeah.
It's beautiful out today. So weird.
All right. So Brandon, it was great having you on. And as you said, I look forward to meeting you in person. Either at your shop or certainly at the convention. I'll be there on Sunday as well.
Yep, I'm
Um,
always here. Well, not always. I'm here
yeah,
Wednesday through Sunday. So
Wednesday through Sunday. So,
yep,
well, I'll be there Thursday. So,
great.
so maybe I'll see you at the shop and you can show me the coziness.
All right, I will.
I'll sit in one of those cozy chairs,
You
those
will.
comfy chairs.
You're damn right you will. And
Yeah,
you will love it. And we'll get a cup of coffee and it's going to be awesome.
sounds good.
All right.
All right,
Thanks for joining me.
thanks a lot, and everyone. Thanks for joining in. And yes, I am from New York, where we're used to snow up there. Yeah, but I hate it. I was like, yeah, I used to love it when I was a kid, but I hate it as an adult. So it's just not. There's no enjoyment in snow when you have to drive or shovel driveways. So it's like
But
it's
yeah, I got to
all
run. I got to open this shop in 15 minutes.
Yeah. All right. You have a great one, and thanks everyone for joining in.